Hi, hello, vanakkam, namaskar, and welcome to yet another episode of my podcast, The People I Meet. I'm Shruti Vijay Kumar Vasant, a radio jockey from Chennai, and on this episode, I'm going to be introducing to you one of my favorite dancers in Namma Ooru, Chennai. So, Chennai as a city has always been very, very open to a multitude of things, and I feel arts and tradition so seamlessly merge in this very, very beautiful cultural capital of Tamil Nadu. But when I say dancer, I don't mean just dancing for the joy of it. She is one of the most fabulous dancers, choreographers, and fitness instructors in the city, and is someone who I truly, truly look up to and am inspired by. Let's welcome Sagrika. Hi, Sagrika. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Shruti?
Doing fantastic. So, how has it been? How has the pandemic sort of treated you? How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. Initially, I was quite devastated because I had opened my studio. I got to run it only for 2 to 3 weeks, and then the pandemic happened and all that came with it, lockdown and what of that. So I had to shut it down. But initially, I had to get used to the new normal and then shifted as many classes as I could to the online mode. Was surprised a lot of people were happy to do the online mode. So yeah, It is what it is. Just taking each day as it comes. And right now I have an online schedule which I work out of my living room. It's not the same as going to a studio or meeting your other dancer friends for rehearsal and generally running around the city with classes and all of that. It's not that routine, which I definitely miss.
Right.
But it is still, now it's become hectic without the commute.
Right.
Yeah, but it's okay. It is what it is. We just have to deal with it and get on with it and just try to make the best out of it.
Something that I've truly always looked up to you is you're a very honest person. You're a very no-nonsense person. You say things as it is. And I think that's a very admirable quality in today's day and age where unfortunately we all tend to put on a mask, pun intended, even before the actual pandemic, right? Because we always want to be politically right. We want to be diplomatic. We want to say the right things. And coming from a field that is as dynamic as dance, I'm sure it was not easy, right? Being the person that you are, being so candidly honest. It's very refreshing to see you be that person. So is Sagrika normally this person in real life?
No. I think why you've seen that side is because I met you in the space of a client because your friend was getting married. So It started off like that with us. When you're running a business and when you're working, you obviously can't afford to sometimes be diplomatic. You have to be able to say that, this will work, this will not work.
Right.
But if you ask most of my friends, I'm always known to be the one who takes a little time to tell my friends off. I'm usually the one who's I will be there for you, whether it's a bad decision, good decision. I'll check with you. Are you sure about it? But that's what you want to do. And then I'm always there. This frankness, Shruti, has come over a period of time.
Right.
It's something which I've had to learn sometimes the hard way. So my most protective are my school friends because they've really seen me be this timid, sort of bit of a doormat, sort of coming into my own. They were always very protective. But it was only in college when I was thrown into an environment where, completely new, did I suddenly realize that it just sort of kicked in that, okay, I need to be able to hold my ground now and I need to be able to, where someone gets off and where, and that over time, I think as you grow older, all the experiences you have in work, life, etc., I feel it just teaches you and then you sort of just come into being this person, right? It's been quite a journey, but I feel like now I am a lot better, but sometimes I always think, do I really need to say that? If I'm going to make a situation into a tiny situation into a big situation, I'm just because actually Sagrika hates conflict. Hate conflict. I do not like it at all. Unless you really push me. And I find it easier to be very, very straightforward and frank with people who I'm not too close to or don't know too well, rather than my own crew and friends and all of that,
Right.
So I feel like I'm only now sort of really figuring out who I am, Shruti. Only now, that's one advantage of this pandemic. It's given me a lot of time to think and process and kind of figure out who I am and what it is that makes me who I am and all of that.
Right. So COVID-19 has sort of put Sagarika into a self-introspection mode, if I could call it like
Yes.
that. And you're sort of, I would say rediscovering yourself because to be very honest, I think one of the reasons why you and I have been friends is also because I hate conflict as well. And I definitely am on your side when, some issues just need to be brushed under the carpet and just left because why make a mountain out of a molehill, right?
And I also feel like a lot of people and a lot of situations, I always think, I don't know, if someone says something because they're stressed. I always feel like, I always think, why are they doing that? So I always try to be empathetic about it. But that's just how I am. Right. And I also feel like it's okay. I mean, your friends, that's what friendship is about, right? You should be able to have a little tiff and then just get over it, right? That's
Absolutely.
But like it's true. I just cannot do conflict. Like, conflict just stresses me out, especially with people I love and people who I'm so fond of. Because you ask my mother, she'll say I'm a devil in the house, but aren't we all at home?
Let's not get into the mother conversation because that will turn into a whole other episode, and I think I don't think a duration of like say 30-40 minutes would be enough, and given given the sort of history that we've had with our very entertaining mothers, I think that will be a definite new episode. But getting back on track, getting back to sort of talking about your journey as a dancer, right? I think more than half of your adult life or even your childhood has been spent at studios and perfecting your craft, right? So take me through that journey. How did that happen? How did you decide that? Because not everybody decides to take this unconventional route of doing dance for the rest of their lives, right? And teaching it and choreographing it and being in the studios, doing this day in and day out. It takes a lot more than just commitment, sincerity, and of course, being good at it. That is definitely, a given plus. But let's just go back to the beginning and sort of figure out from where it all started for Sagarika the dancer.
So it all started, I think, years and years ago when I was a toddler.
Right.
In Jordan.
Okay.
In a restaurant cum bar where my parents took me.
Okay.
And went with them because my father is in the Merchant Navy, and they went to this party, and this is told to me. Okay, so I obviously have no recollection of it.
Right.
And there was a band playing, and there was a DJ and all of this, and we're talking early 90s Jordan.
Okay.
And I got up on the table, and apparently, I danced, but I didn't dance like a typical toddler. Like I obviously had like some sort of beat, I guess. A lot of people in the club started throwing money on me.
Wow. Okay.
So my parents kind of like scrambled to stop that. But from then on, I first started, I think I always danced at home. Like I always danced I was 6 or 7 when my mom put me in a dance class with John Brito. My first dance teacher was John Brito. It's now something which not many people know. But he was my first dance teacher, and at that time he was just starting off. So he used to rent out this space that was below Vimonisha Gallery in Nugambakam.
Okay.
And he used to bring this big boom box, and we used to just learn dances. We do like a quick warm up, and I just remember learning like a lot of Bollywood songs and some English songs. But I just loved it. I remember my 6-7 years standing in front of that mirror and just having a blast. Like I just totally enjoyed it. And then my father at the time was traveling. He came back once and he came to pick me up, and he just did not approve of this dancing. So he was just like, I'm sorry, like this is not happening. What is this Bollywood dance that she's dancing to? My father has always been a bit averse to dance, to his daughter dancing. That has of course changed drastically over the years. But also my grandmother was a dancer, so I got it from her. And my mum also went for dance classes when she was younger. She kind of understood it, got it more than my dad. And then my dad pulled me out of it. Then in school I take part in all these annual day, class annual day programs and all. So obviously they would give me kind of like the lead sort of roles where the group dances were concerned, So I'd be up in center or up inside or whatever. And it was in the 5th standard when we had a Kolatam performance that one of the parents of a friend told my mother, said, you need to really look at this talent because she's pretty good. Like you need to think about it.
Do something about it. Yeah.
And my mom said, look, I don't know, because like my husband has this big aversion and this one doesn't want to do classical dancing. My grandmother was a classical dancer. She did Bharatanatyam and Kuchipudi. So she also noticed this rhythm and all of that, and she got a dance teacher to come. He came home I'm talking, this must have been 98, 99, right? So I'm
Right.
10 years old. And then obviously like my idea of how a man should be is very different back then. So I was only 10. And he comes and he was a bit effeminate in the way
Right.
he instructed. And I was like, I found it really like, I was like, this is not, like I just wasn't feeling it the first 2 days. And I started laughing and then I found him funny and all. And then he got fed up with me. He told my grandmother, this is not going to work. I can't
Right.
teach this child anymore. My
Right.
grandmother, of course, was very, very upset, not with me but with him, because he said that. And she felt that, she said, doesn't matter, maybe she doesn't have an aptitude for Indian classical, but she'll definitely do some other form or
Right.
whatever. Then anyways, then in the between this and that Kolatam performance, my mum took me for this John Brito had his first show ever. By then he had opened his first studio.
Okay.
And I sat and I saw these kids on stage and I saw everyone dancing on stage. And Shruti, I started bawling, okay? My mother could not understand why the hell I was crying. And I said, no. And I was like, I want to be on stage and you stop my dance classes. And all of this started coming back to me. And I was like, this is not fair. I want to be there. And my mom was like, okay, you know what? Like, this child needs to stop crying. And she said, no, you can dance in school, this, that, no.
Right.
Then in 6th standard, we had like inter-house competitions, okay? But they used to only take kids from the 7th onwards.
Right.
My seniors in school, 6 years senior to me was Dulkar.
Okay.
And 3 years senior to me was Shantanu.
Wow.
And Shantanu, what many people don't know is that he's a fabulous dancer.
Yes.
And I remember Shantanu had seen me dance, I think in some annual day thing.
Right.
So he kind of was like, this kid needs to dance for our house.
Okay.
I remember 7th standard very clearly when I started taking part in the inter-house dance competition. And he said, this kid, like, you better come and you better audition. So I remember 7th standard, I took part in my first inter-house dance competition. And then, like, I remember, like, people saw me on stage. And that's when a whole sort of, like, the school kind of knew that, okay, this kid
Right.
dances. And then 7th standard, then 8th standard, 9th standard, 10th standard, I just started like taking part in inter-house. Right until up to like when Shantanu left school and all, he in fact choreographed even the year he passed out. And I remember this one year, my mother refused. She's like, no, if these practices are too late, then there's no one to pick you up and drop you. And this is getting too much to handle and all of that. And I remember I told Shantanu when he came to class for auditions, he's like, you come, you're in the dance. And I said, no, I can't come. My mother said, no. And he chased me around the basketball court. He's like, you will come. I'm your senior. You have to come. I said, you talk to my mother. So he spoke to my mom and he's like, auntie, I will drop her back. You don't worry. His mom spoke to my mother and then they used to stay close.
Right.
So I'd go for this. So I'd be the youngest in the team for a really long time. That's where I kind of understood the concept of rehearsals and all of that. After my 10th, my mom seriously started looking for a dance class for me because I was pretty adamant. And she made me take part in this Carnatic singing camp during my 10th board holidays, like after my board exams. And I used to hate it because I used to be like, I don't want to do this. But then the deal was, she's like, look, you've got selected. Because I got selected by like a bunch of kids, 800 kids auditioned for that. 80 kids got selected, okay? And I used to learn Carnatic music. So I just went for it. My mom said, you do this, it's only a matter of a month and then you can go to dance class. So I said, you know what, fine, I'll do it. So then I finished that and I told my mother, I said, we're looking for a dance class right now. That's when my mom did a lot of, and I'm really glad that my mom really sort of went into it. She didn't just sort of look at proximity. She didn't look at, oh, someone close to home. This one's daughter goes here. I'm glad she didn't do that.
Right.
Because I think she kind of knew this is where like my passion was. She must have seen it on stage, right? They always say that you see them, you see stage presence and like I see you on stage and I'm like, this girl is born to do this, right? So I feel like she did some serious research, Shruti. Like she asked a lot of people and they told her about Kokla, an Academy of Modern Dance in Russian Culture Center. So they said, listen, this lady does exams and she's affiliated to a board in Australia and it's not just another dance class. It's proper technique, proper foundation. There's discipline to it. Yeah. And my mother, discipline and all is very important. So she took me there and my mother, being my mother, proud of me and all, she told my current dance teacher, Koki, she told her, I met Koki for the first time and I was all of 13 or 14 and she told Koki, this is my daughter and she's like this, she's one of the best dancers at school, this, that and all. So Koki just looked at me and she said, okay. She said, let her do the summer workshop. Let her do a jazz hip hop summer workshop.
Right.
And then later we figure out whether she wants to do jazz. My mother said I want her to do ballet, but she doesn't want to do ballet. She wants to do like jazz hip hop. And I remember the first day Koki saw me dance. Then they were giving us stretches on the floor, and she came to me and she looked at me and she said, "You need to stretch more." And I said,
Right.
"Yes, I will." And then she looked at me and she said, "Your mother said you're the best dancer," or something like that. And then I looked at her and I was like, "Oh God." She said, "Listen, you're not that great. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. There's a lot of energy that's all over the place, and
Right.
I need to work on this. So let's forget the fact that you're one of the best dancers. You have a lot of work to do." I was just stunned,
Right.
scared. I don't know, but I wanted to go back to class. And I swear now at 30, I thank Koki. I'm like, if
Right.
you had not done that to me, like that was amazing. Like she really, I feel it was harsh, but it was needed, because that's when I truly started opening up my mind and really doing the work sort of holistically. So I joined Koki's. I did her jazz class. When in 2006, 2007, she asked me to take part in a show as a dancer, and she gave me my first ever payment. I did one dance. I still remember. It was for the Coast Guard ball. It was one of the hottest songs at that time, and I did one dance, and she paid me $250. Okay, so my first ever like salary, 2 minutes of dance, got $250. Then slowly Koki gave me the opportunity to teach a class. Then I started doing more shows, started traveling. You know how it is, right? I mean, yeah. And then I went to college, and then I took part in the college dance team. I used to freelance as a dancer in college. In the sense, I used to make like little money on the side, take part in shows. Started working with different choreographers. Was part of the college dance team. Would still go to Koki's class. Was teaching in Koki's class. So there was a sort of a stipend we'd get as student instructor.
Right.
And then also work with certain kids. One of our choreographers from college sent me on this job to teach 2 sisters, and that really referred me to people. So I was teaching also. Post college. Right. Then I took part in musicals. You know how it is, no, Shruti? The theatre dance scene is pretty sort of like connected. Yeah.
Yeah. And in Chennai, everybody knows everybody.
Yeah. And when I was in college was when we did that Doordarshan show, which is the first time I actually saw you. And then after that, after my undergrad, I actually wanted to study dance. I wanted to become a choreographer. But my father, I think the person he is, he used to throw a big fit when I had to perform on stage and all. My mother just used to, I don't know how she used to manage him, but she used to tell me, if you are passionate about this, then you're going to have to fight. And one of the people you're going to have to fight with is your dad. So if you got to like somehow keep your grades up and just like do what you have to do, because if this is what makes you truly happy, you got to fight for it. So yeah, I'd have these huge fights with my father. Eventually when he'd come and see the show, he'd be proud but won't want to talk about it. But then he was quite concerned when I said this is what I want to do, and then he said it's the make it or break it. See, back then in 2009, 8-9, we didn't have Instagram, we didn't have
social media as such.
Facebook was not as big as it is now. So I really sort of established myself in that period where you don't need Instagram.
Correct.
Get it? Like I didn't really rely on Instagram until maybe 2-3 years ago.
Right.
Mine was mainly word of mouth, and word of mouth works great in a city as small as Chennai, right?
Absolutely.
So my dad was like, oh, it's a make it or break it. I don't know. I didn't have any resources to show him. So I said, okay, you know what? Fine. Like, it's okay. Like, I'll go and I'll do the next thing closest to it, which is another like interest of mine is films. I love films. So I went and I studied film and television with media management in Pune. And that, like the 2 years that I went and studied there, I, of course, it was a big, apart from it being great, it also put an end to my that many hours of rehearsal, that many hours of practice, because you're in hostel, you're studying, then you're a part of student council. Of course, I danced as much as I could whenever I could, but it really, like, I now feel sometimes, I shouldn't have maybe left then. Like, I feel it really like put a stop, because when I came back, I had to do a lot of like work. Because when I came back, I never wanted to take up dancing as a profession. I wanted to start off as an AD. But somehow I feel this field sort of found me. There was this one client who found out that I was back in town.
Okay.
And she kind of like called me and cajoled me and said, you have to come and teach my kids, and we're here only for a month. And I said, listen, ma'am, I'm not doing this anymore. I can put you on to somebody else. And she's like, no, they're 2 girls. I trust them only with you, and you have to come. And so I said, okay. So I told her, I said, listen, I'll come, but I can't do like more than twice a week. I said, please don't tell people and all. Like,
Right.
So I do this. And then she obviously has gone and told someone, or the kids had told someone. Next thing I know, I'm back to teaching class. I come back, first of all, from Pune, I come back overweight as hell. My dance teacher has like a shock when she sees me.
Right.
Then she's like, you better get back to class and start moving because I'm worried. So I go back to class. Then I go to the gym. And then someone tells me, hey, there's a Zumba license coming into town. And this was 2013. Literally first batch, okay? So he said, why don't you give it a shot, because you love to dance and it's a great way to make an income if you're interested in that, but it's fun. But I was like, I hate the gym, it's so irritating. And she said, why don't you do this, because you love to dance and you'll also lose weight and you're accountable.
Right.
So I did it. I loved it. I did it, and I knocked off like my initial, I knocked off like some 20 kilos just doing Zumba. Like, it was nuts, because I got my body to sort of wake up again. Also, I had to deal with the realization that my body is not 19-20 anymore. It was now more 24-25. Yeah. My flexibility has sort of gone for a toss. And then in the meanwhile, my self-esteem also in dance class had sort of taken a hit. I wasn't really feeling it anymore. I went through my journey of where I wasn't really happy with the way I was. So I was going through my own thing with my relationship with dance. I didn't know whether I was dancing for myself. Was I dancing for syllabus to pass a grade? Was I dancing for the joy of it? What was it for? You know?
So this is one of those reasons why I wanted to have this conversation with you. Because as a dancer myself, of course, I'm not as trained as you are, but I understand that when we perform, right? Like you rightly said, we perform for the joy of it. And we've seen that, right? We've seen that on several occasions where we've done that just for the joy of it. But when it comes to instances like this, where your mind is at its lowest, where your self-esteem is at its lowest, and when you're not in competition with anybody else but yourself, you want to get back to that, the glory days, as we call it, right? How did you sort of deal with that? Tell me a little bit about that.
I don't think I dealt very well, Shruti. I went through a period of denial. I wasn't being very responsible for the way I was dealing with it. I wasn't being accountable. And then luckily in 2014, a competition came through. So I had to work extra hard, and we were performing in Singapore. It was an international competition that Koki was sending us for. And I placed in the competition with we did a trio piece, and we placed. And that really woke me up.
I remember this because that was, like you said, the time where Facebook was truly the place to be, the hip and happening, all the information about Chennai.
Yeah, this was that clown makeup one.
Right.
So we won, and then I came back. The Zumba classes started becoming famous. I was running to people's houses and teaching.
Right.
And of course, I was also aiding on the side. And then my dance teacher once, she said, where are you teaching the Zumba class? And I said, I'm going here, going there, all of that. And then she kind of told me, she said, why don't you use the space in class? I said, okay, let's do that then. And I sort of took over their space, and I ran Zumba classes there. That's when I did Zumba was when I started looking at alternate forms of fitness.
Right.
That's where my interest came. First, it started off with something to keep me fit, and then I started looking at things, and I started looking at certifications, at international certifications and all that. And I started getting more interested in how the body works and what it does and all of that. And then I did my certification in the US, which is where I did the bar and all of that. And I came back. Then I started the bar classes, and I started the Zumba classes. And then, of course, I decided to stop the aiding. It was getting very difficult with my classes. Because, the AD schedule, right? They call you like the night before there's a shoot. Yeah, it's nuts.
Correct.
I said, okay, let me do this. This seems great. It seems viable. It seems lucrative. And then, of course, I got a project to handle the logo making for an international organization. And they needed me to register a company. To send the payment. So I got a logo designer on board, and I handled the whole project. It was received very well. And I made this company, to register. And then it was just lying around. And then one of my friends quit her job, and she said, hey, why don't we take this up and do this together?
Right.
That's where it started. So now we used to do content long back, but then we stopped doing content. It's too much. So now we do just design, and it's picking up, and it's okay. We didn't really pay too much attention with it. Whenever work came, it came. But now after putting in a little effort, that's sort of come up. But yeah, and then I just started going back to dance class. I would teach my classes, I'd go for rehearsal, go back to doing shows, videos, teaching, the works.
Right.
And then finally this year I opened the studio, and like I said, unfortunately I had to shut it. But I've always wanted to have my space, and I've always loved teaching, and my forte is to teach. But I feel that need. Lots of people ask me, Shruti, they say, why are you not on Instagram? Why are you not posting every day? And because I never had to for 10 years, and everything was word of mouth. And still most of my people who inquire, it's through word of mouth.
Right.
Or it's through a workshop. The largest percentage for me in terms of inquiries is word of mouth. And I've also become comfortable. I've said, okay, like I'm not comparing myself anymore with anyone. I've realized, okay, if I dance for the joy of it, and I feel the results are 100 times better than what it was if I'm dancing to prove myself to someone.
Right.
I feel it's been quite a journey of learning in terms of the business, in terms of myself, in terms of the dance itself, you know. So but I don't think I'd be doing anything else. Like, this is what I love to do, and it's been my dream to have a studio, so I'm glad it's there. So whenever this is over, I'd be like more than happy to run it. And now I'm running jazz ballet syllabus for kids. I'm teaching some adults. I'm teaching primarily a lot more fitness classes than dance, but I still, of course, we still on Zoom, some of our dance class friends, we try to get together and jam and all of that. That's fun. It's been a lot of things, but it's definitely been good. Like, now in retrospect, I'm glad it went the way it went,
Because I think sometimes when we reflect back upon life, right, like when we were talking about, when you just said maybe I shouldn't have taken that break and gone to Pune, but sometimes when you look back at it sort of made you the person that you are. Because as someone who truly gets into this philosophical mode and who talks about, it is the way it is. Sometimes we are in this situation, and what truly matters is how we pick up from that point and keep moving forward. Right? I remember recently talking about this with somebody as well, where we talk about competition, especially in a city like Chennai. It works both ways, right? It's a double-edged sword. People know you, people also know you. Right? You get what I'm saying? So there's an opinion of you even before the person has actually met you, because somebody has said something. Right? And that could work in our favor, that could not work in our favor. But coming from an industry that is, very look oriented, whatever said and done, as much as we talk about body positivity, as much as we talk about visual representation and equality and all of these things, somewhere I feel as a dancer also, dance is a very visual medium, and people have certain expectations when they see a dancer perform on stage. And I've had this conversation with you several times, especially because of the whole weight thing and all of that, right? But as a dancer, as a teacher, what do you sort of tell your kids, right, or your students when it comes to this visual aspect of dance? How have you sort of dealt with it?
I've had people who looked at me and said, especially when I went through that phase where I put on a lot of weight, and also that I went through a phase, mind you, where I was teaching classes, I was dancing, but I was not losing any weight. I was in fact putting on weight. And then a friend of mine, a dear friend of mine, pointed it out to me, saying, that's because you're not taking care of yourself. She said, you're stuck in this rat race to teach and do. You're not sleeping well, you're eating crap, you're not eating well, you're not taking care of yourself, For me, I was a very slim child. I was slim until I was 21, 22, and I kind of grew into this womanly body only when I was about 21, 22, And then it took me some time for me to sort of accept it. And then I put on so much of weight in Pune. Then I came back, and then it's only now over the last 3 years that I've sort of worked on it, and I'm not as large as I was, I've considerably worked on it, really focused on myself and really learned where to sort of stop and be like, okay, like this is too much for today, I need to take care of myself a bit better. That way, I feel the pandemic has helped in the sense that I feel I've gotten fitter because I have more time to take care of myself. Like, I'm eating better, I'm sleeping better.
Your focus is more about you and you being fit, right?
Yeah, when it was dangerous, my dance teacher would say it was dangerous, but never once. I also grew up into being a bit of a broad-built girl, but that's genetics.
Right.
So for me, now my idea of fitness is I'm not killing myself to, be thin.
Look a certain way. Right.
I'll never be thin because it's genetically not possible. Like I can be fit, I can be defined, but I really don't think I'm going to end up looking the way I looked when I was 14 or 15, right? But to my little girls who do, some of them do show certain tendencies of saying, oh, you know, but I won't look and I won't that. And then I tell them, I say, listen, you just need to move every day. Even in my fitness classes, I believe you move every day, and as long as you're fit, then that's important. If you're able to go through your day-to-day life feeling fit and you have energy to go through your day-to-day activity, then I think you're fine. You know, and also another thing in what I really appreciate about Koki, which a lot of us appreciate, is she never once discriminated us in terms of our bodies.
Right.
You know, in fact, she would always say, "My girls are strong," and she would never say, "Get on this diet and get on this diet." Like she'd be feeding us 24/7. She'd be like, "Just bloody eat. You're working so hard. Just eat." And she's really like, she would say, you know, my girls are strong. In fact, many times it'll be me and another girl lifting a couple of them.
Right.
You know.
Right.
As opposed to the guys lifting. Many times she'll be like, Sags, come here, you come here and like lift. Like, these are my strong girls, they lift. We've like sat in sumo squats and had people pile up on us in pyramid and all of that, you know.
Right.
Of course, when it got unhealthy, see, there's a difference between being unhealthy and healthy. When it got unhealthy, like, you know, she would warn us. And of course, many times, like, I realized it was a problem and I realized I was moving slower than what I normally used to move.
Okay. So it was more about you understanding that and your teacher guiding you in the right possible way, right?
So I tell my kids, I'm like, listen, like I tell my kids, I was like, listen, you can break a beat and you are fit and you are healthy. That's more than enough. Like, don't be worried. Another thing I feel is, Shruti, we also need to, our costumes need to be designed better. Like I have said this always. Because like you said, you can't ignore the fact that dance is a visual thing.
Right.
I'm all for body positivity. I'm not saying no. And there's also a fine line between something that's looking classy and something that's not looking so classy. So I truly believe like our costumes need to be more inclusive.
Right.
I need to be better made. And also like there are some people who, you know, who say, oh, you know, I am the way I am because I've had, you know, PCOD, I've had PCOS, I've had this. And I've worked with people who've got PCOD and PCOS. I've helped them lose weight. So I know it's not possible. I feel like, you know, at some level, you need to also make the effort to be healthy. Unfortunately, with excess weight comes a whole bunch of other problems.
True.
For me, the main thing is health. But I also feel like in Chennai, especially, our costumes need to be way better. You know, because sometimes, like, you know, I see that, you know, they put their dancers in outfits that don't suit the body type. And then, you know, the person itself, first of all, looks uncomfortable in that outfit.
Right.
And then they're doing all these rolls and all of that. And then you have a costume that's flying up. And then the audience is going, like, what is that? And then you see, and then not everybody has a six-pack ab, which is fine. Whatever. Then you'll see one roll here, one roll there. And then it gets... like, what is going on?
Everybody, it makes everybody sort of...
So I feel like, what are you doing? Are you going to prove a point, say, oh, I can wear whatever the hell I want to wear? Or are you going to, like, somewhere there has to be a line, right? Like, I truly believe there needs to be a line somewhere, especially because it's a visual thing.
Right.
Like, I know so many big-made dancers who look beautiful on stage, and they look beautiful also because they take that effort to kind of wear the right sort of stuff.
Right. I think that's a very well-made point, because I think that's something that not a lot of people truly pay attention to, because they think that it's just about the moves, it's just about, you know, presenting the well choreographed sequence and then it's done. But like we were discussing, dance is more than that, because behind the scenes, behind the countless hours of practice, the countless hours of rehearsal, at the end of the day, the output that is presented needs to be presented well. And I also feel a lot of dancers in Chennai don't put in the amount of fitness required to dance. Right.
You know, because see, I feel a lot of dancers also feel, you know, oh, but I'm dancing 10 hours a day. You're dancing now, your body is used to dancing 10 hours a day. It's hit a plateau.
Right.
You need to be able to work out to be able to do that 10 hours of dancing and more if you need to, and build more stamina, strength, versatility, whatever, you know. So I really appreciate dancers who put in that, you know, that 1 hour warm up, working out, you know, in between. I started doing that and it really helped, like, my dancing, my flexibility, all of it. I feel a lot of dancers, now I'm talking about the younger dancers, that, you know, the 20, 21, 22, they're so caught up on uploading stuff on Instagram, on getting likes on Instagram, on, you know, people noticing them on Instagram and people saying, oh wow, this is cool and that is cool and this. And like sometimes I feel, you know, I'm like, what are you dancing for? You're dancing for Instagram? Are you dancing for the fame? Like what is the point? And sometimes like I see like some stuff is utter like you and I have discussed this. Like some of the pieces are just like rubbish and you're like, what?
How do I respond to this? Yeah.
What is this? What? You know what? Of course, another friend of mine says, but so what? You know, they're dancing for the joy. They're dancing for this. But I'm like, you can dance for the joy, but then you be very clear about it.
Right.
Don't do something and then call it a jazz, a hip hop, something when it really isn't. Because you have a bunch of us who've been trained in that, who've spent years under Koki's stick and care, and then, you know, you have one person who comes and does something to some Bollywood dance and does one leg raise here, one turn there, which is not even to the correct turn, and then they say, oh, this is jazz and this is and then I'm just like, I don't like it, maybe because I don't do it. You don't see me doing some fusion, not even like, even if I do a fusion piece, you'll never hear me saying this is a mix of classical because I don't know classical.
Right.
I will refrain from that, you know. So I do have like certain issues, you know, where I feel that, you know, people, I don't think they spend enough time with their art. I think they're all caught in this rat race of Instagram and Insta likes and this and that. There is also a section, Shruti, which has got it right. Like one person who's definitely got it right, and she's got the perfect balance is, again, a friend from dance class, Alicia, who does the dance hall. I really love how she does her work, and, you know, she's really like focused. She does her workouts, she does her things. She's also a dear friend. She's also somebody who really helped me in my journey of realizing where dance and I stand. She was definitely a person. Another person who I feel is really good with this whole social media dance, what am I dancing for, balance, if there isn't, like, I don't think there's any word for this topic that we're talking about, is Simran Sivakumar. I think she's fabulous. There are a lot of people who, like, I of course like admire for their styles that they do, but sometimes I feel some dancers need to be like, okay, this is not my thing, I should not. There's also this young boy, check him out, his name is Karan. He's actually a United Grooves dancer, and his pieces are amazing. They're mostly urban and all. There's also my dear friend Milton. You won't see him putting up something every other day, but like he's like, there's a lot of quality that goes into work.
See, I think somewhere this is a discussion that sort of goes into, like I said, you know, a completely different episode altogether, and it's something that I truly do want to discuss at some point. So we talk about quality versus quantity. Today we live in a millennial age where I think kids just grew up with cell phones. Kids just grew up with having access to all of those things. Like, I feel like a fossil sometimes because I've never used TikTok. I've never used Snapchat. I've never done any of these things.
And some, like, our dance shows were shot on video, they'll give us CD, okay?
Right.
And then we take that CD and show it to our family and friends. That's how it works. But also, I feel like sometimes, I think, you know, maybe this is a generation thing. Maybe this is how it is now. Maybe I would have been like this. So I also try to empathize also with them. But it's been...
That's the thing, Sagarika. So I think somewhere it sort of stems what you rightly said, right? Maybe because we belong, maybe because we are truly the 90s kids, right? If we were born in this era, probably, if we were born as 2K kids, we probably would have been on the same bandwagon, and maybe they have thought, right? They look at us and they're thinking, hey, why are these people not doing this?
Yeah, but you know what? I get very proud sometimes, okay? Like when they call you. And these younger ones especially, they'll see you at workshops. They kind of gather you're a senior dancer because you know, like, the person running the workshop. Someone will say, hey, Sags, what's up, man? How come we don't see you that much on stage? So they generally, the younger ones will kind of figure out, and then they see your technique, they see your foundation, especially in all these contemporary jazz type stuff.
Right.
And then, you know, they come to you and they, like, you know, they say, Akka, can you give me like some advice? You've been doing this for a really long time. How do I run my class? Like, I still, like, even like my friend Milton, he's so close to me, but he is younger than me. And like just the other day, like, he called me and he said, listen, Chag, I got this gig at the school. Like, we've been teaching in schools for years. He's like, I don't know what Chag, I don't know what to do. Can you help me make a plan for the kids? I said, absolutely. Like, I'll help you. Like, I very like,
you feel responsible,
right?
Yeah. I think somewhere, I think that's sort of, you know, a particular group of people, I feel, are sort of setting standards, are sort of setting a pathway for the people to follow. Right? Because I think that's very important. I think that is so important because you're on the right path. You're telling them, do this. It's going to work out, and guiding them in the right direction. I think that is something that's truly commendable. And like I said, going back to this discussion of quality versus quantity, I think we'll have to probably do it for another episode because we've quite covered, I think, many topics in this very, I wouldn't say short and crisp conversation. I think we've gone into detail about several different things. And I think that's pretty much what I wanted to sort of, discuss with you today, as well as your journey as a dancer, as an instructor, because you've dabbled with multiple things, right? And I've seen you literally flit from class to class to class in that car of yours, living out of that car. So, I think I can sort of say that the journey has truly been a roller coaster for you. So sort of ending this podcast and just putting everything that we, like a summary of sorts, right? I just want to ask Sagarika 2 things. 3 things that you are proud about yourself as a journey, that you've had from a dancer, from somebody who's not loved her body, from somebody who's today taken this up full time and is actually, showing the path to a lot of youngsters. And 2 things that you want to tell your future self. Maybe, 5 years down the lane, if you are looking back and you're listening to this and you're like, hey, the younger Sags was actually pretty sensible. What would they be? What would they be?
So the first one was, you said the thing that I like about myself in this journey, right?
Right.
Yeah. I think my resilience. I've been very resilient. I've been extremely resilient, and that's something I teach my kids always. The kids I teach, I keep telling them, because I feel the current generation right now, they're a bit more protected. Right. So I feel a lot of them, they don't want to, they like, immediately they say, oh, this step doesn't come and it's not easy. And so I tell them, I'm like, listen, bro, life's not easy. Like, you need to be resilient. Like, if you, and I always feel like my lessons in dance class have played out in life.
Right.
Okay. So I feel like you learn a lot when you learn an art form. So I always feel like, I think for me, what I love the most is my resilience and my flexibility with the situation, whatever it is. 5 years from now, I want to hopefully say I was sensible, and I hope to have the studio fully running and packed with people and events.
Right.
And I also think like 5 years from now, I think I should be able to tell myself to slow down a bit and that, everything's going to work out. So I think if I can do that, I think I've sort of arrived. So, But before we go about the whole body positive thing, I really feel as an artist, I think when you put your time, soul, life, effort into practicing that art form, whole and whole, starting from, you want to immerse your body in it, your soul in it, your time and effort, all of it. I feel then your fitness, it'll just work out.
Right.
So I always want to tell young women, especially young girls, it really doesn't matter what size you are. Okay. As long as that is not a part of your thought when you're dancing to the beat. You just dance, and you just make sure that you dance better and better every day, and you put in the work to do that. Your body is going to be fit, healthy, and just move every day. Like, don't let that stop you from doing what you love,
I think that's a very beautiful way to sort of wrap up this podcast. Today, joining me on The People I Meet is Sagarika. We've had a very extensive conversation covering a wide variety of topics. The only thing I told Sagarika when I was getting her on this podcast was, hey, Sags, just come. We're going to talk about things that we always do. Right? Because this is the sort of conversation.
It's so easy to talk to you, man.
Thank you. And
I think also because our dance journeys were around the same time. You in classical and me in Western. It was we were sort of doing it parallelly around the same time. Yeah.
Right. So I think that's the sort of message that Sagarika wants to put out to everybody who's listening today. I've said this quite often as well. Size according to me, age according to me is just a number. As long as you're doing what you want to do with your whole heart, that's very, very important. Following your passion is not just about putting in the hours. It's not just about saying, I worked out 10 hours in the studio today and why is it not happening? But you've got to have your heart and soul in it. And that's where a true artist truly, truly thrives. And one such artist today, Sagarika joined me today on the podcast and shared with me several experiences of her life, of her journey as a teacher, a choreographer, a dancer, and an entrepreneur. I know it's not been easy, Sags. I know that you've had a roller coaster. Truly, your life has been that. But you've managed so beautifully and you've come out. It's like this ballerina that you see in those very fancy...
In those boxes.
In those boxes? Yeah, I think every time life threw something at you, you just turned things around and you twirled your way into everybody's hearts.
Thank you, Shruti. That's very sweet.
I think I'd like to end my podcast on that note. Once again, a big thanks to Sagarika for joining me today on this episode of The People I Meet. This is Shruti Vijay Kumar Vasant. My podcast, The People I Meet, is all about life-inspiring stories from the people I quite literally meet. Right? So I'll see you on the next episode once again with a new story, a new experience, and hopefully a lot more interesting conversations. This is me, RJ Shruti, signing off for the day. The podcast is The People I Meet. See you in the next episode.